So the first video in our series is on intellectual fit and academic competence, or intellectual fit, academic competence, and vocation in healthcare. So we all know that most students and most parents and many administrators, when they think about careers in the healthcare, they think that it's primarily based on the idea that that there's these metrics, test scores, and grades that admissions committees look at, and they're the sole determinant of a candidate's admissions. But the reality is that most schools are looking at the candidate holistically, but still that academic piece is crucial, is critical, is foundational. So there's a tension there. On one hand, you have students who have 4.0 GPAs and that's it, and they think that's going to get them into the program and that's preparing them. The lab, the classroom is enough. On the other hand, you may have students who aren't as academically as strong who think they're disqualified because they aren't the 4.0 student. In reality, neither is true. So what we are going to explore, because we have a vocational lens, is how the academic piece, how we should be thinking about the academic piece in terms of calling, in terms of vocation. So there's some students that ignore the data, the grades they get, the experience they're having in the classroom when it's really negative. And then other students who overemphasize the data. It's really positive and as strong as pointing toward a career, but there may be other areas in their life that they could look at and it would signal to them that this isn't necessarily a good fit. So I'm really interested in seeing what the students come up with in this video and the conversation that will follow, all of us having watched it and then posted on Flipgrid our thoughts about it.
So our video is on academic competency and vocation. First, I would like to talk about academic competency and what it is and what it means when looking at medical school applications. So academic competency is kind of this collective overlook of someone's grades or like test scores. And while medical schools, they do observe things holistically, it's not something to necessarily neglect or to ignore. Grades, they show that you are up for the rigor of medical school and can challenge yourself to an extent that would be acceptable. In medical school, being aspiring physicians, we will be taking like tests all our lives, and so we need to be able to show that we know how to take these tests and we know how to prepare for them.
So along with academic competency, grades can also help clarify if the medical field is right for you, and that's kind of how we see vocation come into play. For example, if you have a bad grade, that doesn't necessarily mean that this field is unfit for you. However, it is something that you should consider when applying for medical school or thinking about the medical field as a possible career. With that being said, good grades don't also mean that you're fit, because there's so many other factors that need to be considered when you apply to med school. From one of the readings about vocation, Dr. Schaffer says that we are not all equally talented. Some are more gifted than others, but this does not diminish the other person's gifts. So in other words, not everybody has the same strengths and weaknesses, and it's important to realize where our strengths and weaknesses lie as a part of discerning our vocation. For example, if you don't like a subject, if you hate it, that doesn't necessarily mean that you are not fit for the medical field, but it may be a sign that isn't your right calling. Just because your strengths lie in one area does not necessarily mean that that is your vocational calling. The second strategy Dr. Schaffer mentions is that joy is cultivated by pushing oneself to grow and further develop gifts and talents. This also includes a willingness to confront reality to ensure that a person is not pursuing his own wishes or what makes him feel good, but is sincerely searching for what is a good way to live out his life. So rather than thinking of our desires and wishes and what we hope to accomplish for ourselves, the other aspect that we have to consider is how our work can be a good place for everybody and how we can make our community a better way.
So another way you can go about discerning your vocation is using the community as a tool. They not only see things that you don't, but can have a more objective point of view. For example, Dr. Hunter in PPHS, he always advises students to be aware of their grades and all of the struggles that they're facing in classes such as OChem, because OChem is a relatively hard class and it can be used as a model for the curriculum of medical school. And by observing either your struggles or whether or not there is some sort of trajectory for improvement, can help distinguish between the line of, is this a weakness of yours, or is it just something that you can improve on?
Tying it back to grades, a letter grade on a piece of paper does not represent just a grade or just a letter. It can tell us a story, it can tell us your different passions, it can tell us how much you value your courses that in order for you to earn that grade. And so in this sense, we have to look at what story our grades tell us through medical schools and their eyes. So our grades can communicate a lot of parts to our personality. It could tell us a part of the story about how we academically prepared for medical school. For example, they may ask questions like, did you take upper level courses? What were your grade trends and coursework patterns? So what kind of trajectory did you follow? If you did follow trajectory, how can you show that improvement through your grades? They may also ask, did you take any writing intense courses? So as a big part of PPHS is narrative writing, and having that within the medical field is something that they would strongly value. And so looking for those kinds of courses is something that they would appreciate to look at. They may also ask, did you challenge yourself with higher level courses in and outside your major? So having you experiment with different classes and pushing yourself outside your comfort zone is something that your grades can also tell you.
So just to touch up again on this idea of a fine line between struggling and dreading the subject, one question you can ask yourself is, how important is your learning for science and medicine, and how much is it worth? You can think about all of the hours that you're putting into schoolwork now and like what your outcomes are, and really think, is this something that you'll be willing to do for the next 8 or so years of your life? Because as aspiring doctors, vets, dentists, that's basically what we will be going through in medical school. So we've talked a lot about the grades and what those can show, but also one thing that should be neglected are the exams like the MCAT or the DAT. They really do embody everything that should already be known and what are the key prerequisites for success in medical school and beyond, so that admissions teams know that you've completed your courses and you have retained enough knowledge to be at an acceptable level in entering medical school.
Okay, so to wrap things up, just as a side note, a lot of things were mentioned throughout this video about how important grades are, but we should remember that medical school admission teams look at people holistically, and that grades are only the foundation. However, grades are the basis from which we can keep building ourselves off from. So just to end on a quote, Dr. Schaffer says, delving into your personal traits, passions, values, and spiritual gifts can help you build on your strengths, compensate for your weaknesses, make better decisions, and ultimately be a better leader. Thank you.